Good morning, Middle East. This is the Line in Zion coming at you. I want to spit some stuff talking about what's going on in this part of the world, and a lot is going on. Oh, a lot. What's the topic today? Battlefield of ideas, and the battlefields that Israel is currently waging and being waged uh, all around it. We're living in interesting times, as the Chinese say. Um, so first, I'll just talk about what happened in the Oxford Union debate. What a catastrophe! It just first off, it's a microcosm of what's going on in England. It's a microcosm of what's going on in Europe, Eurabia. We have an basically you have a hostile minority population. Nobody wants to come to terms with that. If you do talk about it, you're immediately criticized as an Islamophobe. Like people getting murdered in the middle of the street, having protests with banners of ISIS, wouldn't start telling you that there's an issue maybe in your country, having swaths of your cities being taken over, calling for Sharia law when you take pictures on the street in some of the oldest cities of England and you have more than half the population 5 times a day bowing to a God that isn't Jesus. There's it should make you wonder. Um, there's no problem with immigration. I'm a Jew. I'm an ethnic minority, but it requires immigration specifically. It requires a steady monitoring. It requires to be a balancing act between how much you let in, who you let in, and how quickly you let them in, because you want to have integration, you want to have cohesion, you want to have a high trust society. These are basic norms that we've understood from a political science perspective for, it's poli sci 101. So there's no inherent discrimination that should happen. There should be no racism that happens, but you need to have an effective policy. And World War II, post World War II in Europe, it's been a disaster essentially. And Oxford Union typified this. You can't now, in this August hall, have a real debate about meaningful things. And you saw that with the people assembled just heckling and screaming and insulting and intimidating. It was awful to watch just from that perspective, to see such a association brought down so low. Whether you whatever however you come out on that issue, it's just what is happening. But I was impressed with the Israeli side having an untrammeled defense and a high conviction of the justice of their cause, which is what you need to have in the face of the mob, the legion of Jew haters and Israel bashers, and good, as we say in this country, kol hakavod, all the respect. Mossab Hussein Youssef was awesome, like usual. Of course, Norman Finkelstein didn't show up last second because he doesn't want to face a person that's actually born from that place and has a critique that makes him look like an ivory tower, poser, intellectual fraud. Um, so Musab Youssef did a great job. He's actually crystallized one idea that I hadn't managed to crystallize. I mean, I understood it, which is, what is the Palestinians? It's not an ethnic identity. They're Arabs. It's not a national identity because there never was one. Uh, if there was a previous nation of Palestine, who was its founder? When was it founded? Because there's no state of Palestine today. When was it destroyed? And who destroyed it? Answer those questions very easily. Let's see. If you can answer those, I would be very interested. So, what is it? And it's a political identity. It's a fig leaf for anti Semitism and denying the Jews their right to self determination in their ancestral homeland. So he's a very important personality in this conversation, and we on our side are very appreciative that he has picked up the mantle so effectively and with such passion. And passion is important when you're arguing these points. These are not just a debate society between point A and point B, but these mean things. And when they hear the passion, that's important. And he does that in a way that some Jews who are advocating for their people aren't able to muster. So Yeah, if you're watching, which I doubt, respect. Um, to the kinetic battlefields, what's going on in Lebanon? You can have your opinion. I think there's a lot that we just don't know. I think Netanyahu is dealing with a munition supply problem that he needs to. This 2 month breathing period may be very helpful. I also think the Blinken, Sullivan, Biden administration had applied very effective pressure. Probably, I'm not sure, but probably something along the lines of using the UN to gum up the works and call for a Palestinian state. And that threat probably worked because that's something that the Trump administration can't unwind. But it's now in place, and it looks like Hezbollah will look to reinforce their positions. Israel is on some level responding, probably not enough, but it's important to realize two things with Lebanon. There's no such thing as the Lebanese army. The parasite of the jihadi Iranian backed Hezbollah is Lebanon at this point. There's no real differentiation between the two. And anyone who's telling you, oh, the Lebanese army are going to do something, it's a fiction, pure fiction, it's a fantasy. And I hope with Trump coming in, he will dispel that State Department wannabeism of the Lebanese army. It's a farce. And the second part is that all of southern Lebanon is infiltrated with Hezbollah. Every town and every house there is Hezbollah or storing Hezbollah weapons. The idea that there is houses that don't, that's probably the burden of proof needs to be on that side, not the other way around. Just from what Israel was able to see in the 3 to 5 kilometer buffer that they were able to build, that they're probably losing in these 60 days and will have to refight for. So that is what's happening on the northern border. Hezbollah paid a heavy price. So regardless, they come out of this the loser. Whether they'll be able to reconstitute themselves is the question. That will also depend on how Israel and the world deal with Iran, and whether Israel will be able to effectively neuter the ability for its resupply. Which brings us to the big news, which is in Syria, the 50-year Bashar Assad regime is over. He ran away to his little, uh, sponsor or patron in Moscow, and the jihadi are taking over in its place. The big winner here looks like Turkey. Israel could have averted this. I wrote about this a few years ago, that Israel should have been supplying and heavily leaning into the Turkish, sorry, not the Turkish, the Kurdish alliance, and armed them with intelligence, arms, training. We didn't do that, and so they are the least of the strong players in Syria right now. But it's better late than never. Israel should be leaning into that relationship as a buffer between Turkey and Syria, and it should mitigate Turkey's influence in Syria, not have Turkey on our doorstep instead of Iran. One is not better than the other. In a way, you could also say that Turkey is almost worse. We have Erdogan who pretends to be the neo-Ottoman pasha of Sunni jihadism, and we do not want him in Syria. Israel, in the meantime, is doing what they usually do, which is some scrappy small wins. We took over the deconflicted zone, demilitarized zone from the ceasefires in 73, and we took the other side of the Hermon. Great. It was a good thing to do, but it's not going to help in the long run, which is Turkey and jihadists that have taken over from Bashar al-Assad, who will inevitably, once they consolidate themselves, look to the big bad cursed Jews. So, but what does it show you? It shows you that first, the Ring of Fire of Iran is pretty much blown apart. And I don't know when there's going to be a better time to take on Iran than it is right now. Iran is now on its back heels. And the looks like the Sykes-Picot arrangements of 100 years ago and the post-World War One order is falling apart, which means Jordan is next. Now, for many, Jordan, with an 80% population of Palestinians who are run by Hashemites that came from what? Saudi Arabia, looks like that could be a two-state solution because it was part of the partition plan of Israel in 1919, the Balfour Declaration, and only in 1922 was it partitioned for the Hashemites. But what we're seeing is a pattern, and Israel should prepare itself for a possibility of the Hashemites falling. And if that's the case, we do actually have an effective two-state solution, a state that's 1.5 times the size of Israel, separated by a natural boundary, the Jordan River, with 80% of its population being Palestinians. Self-determination. They lose the justice of its cause. If they want maximalist aims, they'll still have maximalist aims. I'm sure they will for what is Judah and Shimon, but they have a state. They're not a stateless people at that point. So this opens up incredible opportunities. It's just for Israel to be bold and courageous and wise in how we see what the next 40 to 60 years could look like. Problem is, we're very good on the tactical battlefront. We've shown the world, don't mess with us. But in terms of strategic forward thinking, thinking in generational perspectives, not the best. So I hope that we start seeing what the possibility of this regional shift could look like. I know that to a certain degree, Netanyahu does in his speech we saw yesterday, talking about what are the outcomes of Syria. Um, he does have a concept of it, but his generals are still run by the October 6th generals. And until we start changing out that leadership and bringing in lines who see Israel for what it is, which is the lion in the region, um, and a stabilizing force that shouldn't be limited because the world doesn't like a strong Jewish nation, then we're going to be thinking like small grasshoppers. Hopefully, Netanyahu will be able to get some of his way, and we look to Iran in the next couple of days to see, couple of weeks to see what happens there because they're racing towards a nuke. So that's what's going on in my neck of the woods. Hope you enjoyed it.